and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 158, and today's date is September 9th, 2013, and the title of this episode is Russia to USA, check, it's your move now. And let's get right into the economic collapse news. The oldest bank in the world now faces critical need to raise $2.5 billion in fresh capital, and it's more than double what they originally planned. The Monte Paschi Bank in Italy is looking to do a bail-in, and we have to remember that during Cyprus there were officials out there saying this is going to be the template. And then they decided, no, I'm sorry, this is not the template. I'm sorry, we made a mistake here. But we also come to find that there was a document that was created by the FDIC and the Bank of England talking about bail-ins. And this document came out in December of 2012. Cyprus bail-in started, I believe it was around April or so, or March of 2013, and they are still under capital controls. People's money was taken from them, and it was around 47%, and it was substituted with worthless bank stock, and the rest of their money was frozen in their accounts where they're not allowed to touch it, and they're only allowed to take out a certain amount each day. And it seems like they're going to do a bail-in for the oldest bank in Italy. And this goes on to say that some analysts said the bank's best option to avoid nationalization could be a debt-to-equity swap. And they can convert some bonds it has already into shares. That would be a hit for bondholders and also for shareholders, but it would be in line with the new bail-in guidelines for banks. And we can see this spreading all across Europe and into America, and they laid this out that they're going to do bail-ins because under the U.S. law and England, there are no bailouts at this time, so they have to figure out a way to prop up the banks, and the only way to do it is to use the people's money that are in the banks at this time. And when bail-ins do come, and you still have money in there, just like in Cyprus, the banks are going to be shut down, the money's going to be frozen, your money will be removed, and they will issue you worthless bank stock. You can't do anything with it because it's worthless, and you will only be allowed to take out a certain amount of money each day, and that's called capital controls. And we can see throughout Europe and the U.S. the economy is completely in a disconnect to the markets. The markets are going to continually to rise. They have the plunge protection team today, the high-frequency traders, pumping this market up as high as it possibly can to keep all eyes off of what's really happening in the world. And again, they will continue to keep gold suppressed until they can't do it anymore. And we continually see this. They are not going to let gold go any higher. And this is a perfect opportunity to purchase more gold, silver, platinum, palladium, anything you can get your hands on at this point, because when gold takes off, you will not be able to get it, you will not be able to afford it, and it's going to skyrocket very quickly. And how do we know the economy is not doing well? Well, all we have to do is look around the world, and I'm going to look around in the U.S. right now, and we can see that retailers are closing their stores. They're going out of business. This year, 2013, we saw about 460 Blockbusters completely close, 160 in the UK, 432 Fashion Bug stores, 200 GameStops, 199 Fresh and Easy, 189 Barnes & Nobles, 189 The Gap, 180 Abercrombie & Fitch, 170 Jones Group, 130 Wendy's, and 120 Sears and slash Kmart's. And the list goes on and on and on. And again, the USA Today had this back in February that Barnes& and Noble, which I just read, J.C. Penney, Best Buy, and I continually keep repeating this because they were all thousands of store closings. And if the economy is getting better and people have disposable income, guess what they do with their money? They go and spend it. But when you get laid off, and there was a lot of planned layoffs, which I reported in my last report or previous report, these people have a tough time finding work. And even if you do find something, it's always for less money. And a lot of these people are finding temp jobs. And they usually have to take 1 or 2 or 3 temp jobs, and they can't even make the same amount they were making before, but they're making enough just to live. And when people end up doing this, they don't have enough money to spend on an extra TV, extra clothing. Oh, I just see this, I just like it, so I'm just going to buy it. And people are not doing that anymore. And I've talked about real estate, how mortgage applications are declining, how JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, they're laying off people in the mortgage divisions, and we see that the traffic in the new home builders like D.R. Horton are reporting the traffic is decreasing, and we're starting to see that sales are starting to slow. Plus, we're coming out of the summer months. The summer months are the good times for real estate. And again, we had Obama out there in the beginning of the summer telling everyone how great it is. We have the unemployment numbers, and all people see is percentages, and it came down to 0.1%, and they say, oh, look, it's all getting better. The stock market's rising. Then, if everything is so great and real estate is so great, why is Wells Fargo expecting a drop in mortgage originations? Wells Fargo is expected to post a decline in mortgage originations in the third quarter and will continue to cut jobs, according to a report in the Wall Street Journal. In the second quarter of this year, they had $112 billion dollars in originations. In the third quarter, it's $80 billion. So we can see that things are starting to decline. Wells Fargo has also eliminated 3,000 positions in their mortgage division, and they're going to continue to cut more people. So how is this a housing recovery? There was also, I think it was 1-800-East-West Mortgages. I discussed it in one of my previous reports. They completely closed down. And JP Morgan is laying off people in mortgage divisions. So this tells you right there is something going on. But they don't want you to look over there. Don't look at the economy. Everyone, move your eyes back to the stock market. And guess what? Gold is not doing anything. So don't even worry about buying gold or silver or anything like that, because we're going to keep the central bankers are going to keep smacking it down so they don't alert anyone to what's really going on here. Now, this was released late Friday. J.P. Morgan closes precious metal sell recommendation. And when I wrote this on the Sentinel alerts, I went, shh, don't tell anyone. Gold is going to go way, way up, because instead of a sell, it's a buy now, and we're going long. JP Morgan's going long on it, and that tells you something. Goldman Sachs also reversed their position, and we're seeing a lot of financial institutions starting to reverse their positions because the smackdown, the big ones, are finally most likely probably over, and they're just going to try to keep it stable at this point until they can't anymore, because we do have this war coming up with Syria, which I'm going to discuss in a little bit, and they understand that things are happening. They need to keep everyone completely confused of what is really going on. And if they can keep gold completely steady and have it push down a little bit, go up a little bit, people don't really recognize what's going on. The stock market keeps going up, so that's a great sign that the economy is getting better, which is completely BS, but that's how people look at it. But when we look around the world and we look at the nitty gritty, we see other things that are happening right now. And this goes on to say that the firm quietly went long commodities, specifically base metals and copper, and the firm also closed its sell in precious metals. Now, I know I talked a lot about Obamacare because I just think it's a complete mess. I don't think it's for the people. I don't think if you have to put a penalty or which is a tax if you don't take it, that is not something the people want. And you can tell that the government has completely gone rogue. They don't listen to the people anymore. They have no idea what the people want. And even if the people do want something, they don't care. You know who they listen to? They listen to those people who are giving them money. That's it. They're not really listening to the people. Obamacare is a complete mess. Businesses are screaming on the top of their lungs, we are not going to hire full-time, full-hour employees. Instead, we're going to keep them at part-time. Forever 21 and many, many other stores and companies have already started doing this, and they realize that they can't afford to pay for this. A lot of people who can't afford Obamacare but are not poor enough to get Obamacare without getting penalized are stuck in the middle, and they will get taxed instead of getting health insurance, which doesn't help anyone. I mean, how does that help? It doesn't. And we're seeing also that 31 million will still be uninsured under Obamacare because this is not universal health care. This is a tax revenue system and money being funneled into the health insurance insurers. That is what this is. And we can just tell by what is going on and how many exceptions they had to make and what is going on right in Washington, D.C. with the staffers. That was the first sign. When the staffers were not poor enough to get Obamacare for free, but not wealthy enough, they didn't make enough to afford Obamacare because I think it was $5,000 for an individual per year and $10,000 or $11,000 for a family, and they said they just can't do it, so they rather just quit. So what happened? Obama came in and bailed them out. Now, what about the rest of the United States? Who's going to bail them out? Nobody. Okay, let's move on here. Now, the NSA has not stopped spying at all. They do have the ability to access your iPhone, your BlackBerry, and Android smartphones. This goes on to say that the NSA has successfully inserted illegal access protocols into the Android OS, the iPhone, the BlackBerry, and it grants them a backdoor access into nearly 3/4 of all cell phones at this point. And in the internal documents, experts boast about successful access to iPhone data in instances where the NSA is able to infiltrate the computer a person uses to sync their iPhone. Mini programs, so-called scripts, then enable additional access to at least 38 iPhone features. And they're also able to do this with BlackBerry and Android. And the NSA has not stopped spying. We realize what they're doing here is creating their lists where they're putting people on there who's going to cause them problems. Are there people talking about armed revolution? And they need to keep track of these people. Chris Christie took it a step further and said, you know what? Those people who are on the no-fly list, I'm going to use that list to issue weapons. And if you're on this list, you can't get one. But the problem is you don't know how you got on there. You don't know how to get off of there. It's a secret list. The same thing with all the other lists. So you don't even know who's on there, who's not on there. And this is why the NSA will never ever stop spying. They also use it to blackmail government officials, to get investment ideas, and to steal people's patents. And this has been going on for a long, long time. And we realize that things are starting to escalate right now. The war, they're trying to push this forward as fast as they possibly can. There will be a strike. There will be a war. Um, they've been planning this for a very, very long time. This is not something that just popped up yesterday and said, hey, you know what? They use chemical weapons. We got to go in there. No, they want to get into Syria because they understand that Iran has a treaty with Syria, and they want to move this war into Iran because this is their last type of hope that they think they're going to prop up the dollar. They want to steal the natural resources. They want to destroy the area, set up their private Western central banks, allow those people to start taking loans out to pay back with interest, and the whole entire thing starts over in the country. More money is put into circulation, more dollars are used, and this is what their plan is, and also to sell the oil in the US dollar, which they are not doing right now. Now, talking about these chemical attacks, and they keep saying, and nobody knows where they got these numbers. There's no proof. They haven't given any type of proof of where they got 1,400 people and the couple of hundred children. But what we do know, and this is what's amazing, they're talking about Assad, and this is their point they're trying to make. Assad used these chemical weapons, which we know he didn't because he invited the UN Security Council in. He put them up in a hotel, and it just so happened the same day there was a chemical attack in the rebel region, and not one rebel died in this, so only the people of Syria, were died. So it makes no sense that Assad would invite them in there and then use chemical weapons. He has to be a complete idiot to do that. But my point is that from all the drone attacks in these Middle Eastern countries, the U.S. has killed 4,700 people. And this includes the terrorists that they were after and civilians. But you know what? They say, it's part of it's part of war, and you're going to have some casualties. Well, I'm sorry. We're not at war. There was no war ever declared. And with these drones, let's think about this for a second. You're in an apartment building, and someone on the third floor has committed some type of crime. Now, you have nothing to do with that, but you live upstairs in the same apartment building. A drone comes in and fires missiles into the building. Your wife is killed and your child is killed while they're trying to kill this person who committed this crime. Is that okay? No, it's not. The United States is making excuses. And listen, I'm not against the United States. I'm against the government. I don't like what they do. I'm not for Assad. I'm not for Syria. I'm just trying to show different points and different angles on the story so everyone sits there and questions and asks more questions and say, well, why? Why is that? And this is the whole point. I remember when President Obama was first taking office saying that when he was going to close Guantanamo, and he said that, we have to be held to a higher standard. Well, guess what? We're not being held to a higher standard. We're doing the same damn thing that the CIA-backed Al-Qaeda people are doing. So the only reason that the U.S. is doing this is because the central bankers control them, and they need to continually push the U.S. dollar on all the Middle East nations to use it as the reserve currency and to capture all the natural resources of the country. This is the only reason why we're in any of these countries. This is why our women and children are dying over there, for paper and ink. It's not for freedom. It's not because they hate us. It's because these central bankers want their system to go on. But Iceland and Hungary were very smart. They kicked the central bankers out of their country. Now, Petraeus is out there calling on Congress to back the White House. Now they're pulling out all the stops right now to get this war started. Right now, less than 10% of the House support this war. They don't even want it. And in my previous report, I said that they are thinking about not even voting because, first of all, only 10% will vote for it. And what they're afraid of is that those people who vote no will lose their backing from certain sponsors that pay for their campaigns. And those who vote yes, they're afraid that they won't be reelected because the people have spoken and they do not want this war. So what are they doing? Well, they have Dianne Feinstein passing around this CIA made DVD that shows a montage of people who are dead from this chemical attack, which shows absolutely nothing, that people are dead, and it doesn't show who did it. It doesn't show anything. And they're passing that around the Senate and the House, and most of most of Congress is saying, well, this brings up more questions, and they're more skeptical, and this doesn't prove anything. Now they're trying to build up the propaganda that the Syrian forces used the gas without Assad's permission, and they're trying to use every single angle because Assad was on Charlie Rose, explaining that he did not use any chemical weapons, and they are trying to pull out every single angle to get this war started. Now, Kerry was being interviewed, and there was a question, and I'm just going to paraphrase what he said. What could stop this war? What could stop this strike? And Kerry said, well, if Assad, gives up all his chemical weapons and and removes them all and let the international countries control it, then we wouldn't do the strike. So Russia heard this, and they said, you know what? We will go to Syria and say, listen, let the international countries control your chemical weapons. Syria said, okay, that sounds good. It came back to the U.S., and now the ball is in the U.S. court right now, and they are trying to figure out a way to still go to war. And they're coming up with so many different angles and so many different schemes just to continue the war drums. There was a report out there saying, and you have to remember, the U.S. really doesn't have evidence. If it was such great evidence, they would have given it to Cameron, and he would have shown the people in the United Kingdom, look at this evidence. This shows Assad used chemical weapons. And they would have voted for this attack. But there was no real evidence. And that's why they voted it down. Now, the White House is using common sense test for Syria. The White House asserted Sunday that a common sense test, rather than an irrefutable, beyond a reasonable doubt evidence, makes the Syrian government responsible for a chemical weapons attack that President Barack Obama says demands a U.S. military response. So, a common sense test. You saw a video, a DVD of dead people. Use your common sense. Who else used it? Well, let me ask you a question. If you saw a dead body and you were standing over the dead body and you saw a video of this, should we just use common sense to say, well, that person in that DVD committed the murder? No. You need real proof. And let me tell you, war should be the last possible alternative. But if you notice, they're trying to skirt around everything. Now we don't need irrefutable evidence. We just use common sense, which is ridiculous. Someone in a murder case, you need real hard evidence to prove someone committed a murder, because otherwise because their lives are on the line. Going to war and sending our women and children over to fight because of common sense test? I don't think so. Now, Representatives Sanchez and McCall say Syria action could lead to a larger war, and it will. This is not going to end the way everyone thinks it's going to end, and I know President Obama is out there. It's not going to be like Afghanistan, and Kerry's out there. It's not going to be like Afghanistan. It's not going to be like Iraq. Well, no, it's going to be much, much worse. It's going to be World War III, because Russia and China are backing Syria. Iran also has a treaty with Syria. So guess what? They are right. It is not going to be anything like that. It's going to be 3,000 times worse than what they're talking about. In the meantime, there are more troops that are sent to Jordan for training. And this is what they use to get permission to send troops to the area. The U.S., sent training personnel and weapons and things to Jordan back in June, and now we have 600 Royal Marines from 30 and 42 commando units will arrive in Jordan next week for a planned war game, and chemical warfare equipment will also arrive. And this is all for training, has nothing to do with the Syrian problem that's going on right now. Turkey right now is starting to build new military bases near Syria. The Turkish army started to build a new military base on top of Kel Mountain, which is located near the Syrian coastal city of Latakia. And trucks carrying with military equipment from southern Hatay province were heading to the Kel Mountains. Adding that, soldiers have started to assemble the equipment on top of the mountain. So basically what's happening is that all of these countries, everyone is starting to prepare for war, which is coming. And again, Russia urged Syria to hand over the chemical weapons, which to international control to avoid a strike. Syria said okay. And what's happening right now is the United States plans to follow up with Russia to see whether a proposal for Syria to put its chemical weapons under international control is credible. And Kerry tells Lavrov that when he made this I guess proposal, it really wasn't a proposal. It was rhetorical, and he really didn't mean it. So basically, Kerry kind of screwed himself and the U.S. government by saying this is what they had to do, and Russia went ahead and did this, and now they're trying to backpedal and try to say, hey, whoa, we didn't mean that. And, to paraphrase, Kerry to Syria, turn over your chemical weapons. Syria to Kerry, okay. Kerry to Syria, I was being rhetorical. We will just bomb you anyway, and soon as we are done gassing you. So they are looking. Kerry kind of screwed up. Kerry is trying to get himself out of this. the White House, the Obama administration, is trying to figure out a way of turning this around because, again, they only want one thing, and that is war. Susan Rice is out there today saying that U.S. inaction in response to Assad use of chemical weapons would threaten U.S. national security and the security of its allies, potentially diminishing America's role in the international community. I think the world is looking at the United States saying you have no evidence, no one is behind you right now, and you need to stop this right now because if you attack Syria, that is an attack on a sovereign nation. And Carney is out there saying we will work with the Russians and speak to them. We would have some skepticism about the Assad regime's credibility. So while we're having these conversations with Russia and Assad, we will continue with our efforts in Congress and we will continue beating the war drums because I would be very, very surprised if the Obama administration says, okay, we're going to give you this time and we will put the chemical weapons under international control and we will scale down and we will not strike. You have to remember they've been planning this for many, many years. This is the end game. All they want is war, and they are continually pushing this forward. The problem is the House is not with them. Obama is going to make a speech. He's going to use he's going to throw everything out there to get the people on his side, to get Congress on his side. Even though there's no real evidence, they'll just keep on hitting it home over and over and over, just like the corporate media. But we know that there is no real evidence. We should be having talks with Syria to calm the situation down. You would think that would be the most logical course of action. Make a deal like the Russians say. Let international control the chemical weapons. Let them take them and remove them. This way, it diffuses the whole problem. There'll be no more chemical weapons attacks if we take all the chemical weapons away. But again, they don't want that. They want war. That's what they're looking to do. This is their end game. They need to get in there. Now, there's a report saying that Al-Qaeda is growing, but what they're saying, it's not growing in the way that everyone thinks, and it could become a very big threat here in the United States. And what they're saying is, even though the core of Al-Qaeda is declining, Al-Qaeda-ism is starting to attract new types of members. And terrorists and extremists are, in many ways, in a stronger position today than in the past. And this is why they're saying this. What's happening now is that Al-Qaeda is morphing. Al-Qaeda is turning into lone wolf terrorists where they can hit any place at any time because they're not part of the core anymore. They're breaking off. They're becoming lone wolves, and they're much harder to keep track of. So the United States today has a bigger threat from Al-Qaeda than they ever had. And what they're doing is they are building the false flags. They are telling you to expect something to happen. And we understand that the anniversary of 9/11 is coming up. There are many, of course, DHS and FBI are out there saying that there are no threats whatsoever. But then the FBI is strengthening the warning of cyber threats. And we have to remember they also put up a private sector advisory about cyber threats on financial institutions. There's also a Million Muslim March on 9/11. There's also in November a power a power drill on the electrical grid and infrastructure, and they're going to simulate cyber attacks, EMPs, and other like attacks on the system. These are all potential false flags. And when I say potential false flags, it doesn't mean they're going to come true. I am just tracking all of them. There's also that nuke that was being transferred from the west to the east, and there was no paperwork. We don't know what happened to that. We noticed that they are the FBI put the SEA on their wanted list now, and they're very worried that they're going to do some type of attack, a cyber attack on the financial institutions. And they're also building the case that Iran has many different factions within the United States, and now this warning with Al Qaeda that they're turning into a lone wolf type of terrorist threat, and they're very hard to track. So we can see that they're building up all of these false flag events because we have to realize they are having a very tough time getting this war started, and their mindset is only one thing: war. That is it. And when all else fails, they will use some type of event to get this war started. What it will be, we don't know. It could very well happen right here in the United States. There could be a nuclear explosion. There could be a chemical attack. There could be a cyber attack. It could happen over in the Middle East. There was a report now saying the rebels are planning a false flag event where they're going to go into Assad-occupied territory, fire a chemical weapon into Israel to try to start this war. So there are many, many things happening at this point, and we realize that there could be a missile into one of the U.S. ships. Israel did a test missile, which really was meant to start this war off. They fired it towards Syria, but something happened and it landed in the water. And we could tell that these elite are losing control because the official lies are no longer effective. The people are not believing what the government is saying right now. The trust in government is at all-time lows at this point. Here in America and all around the world, there is no confidence in the corporate-owned media anymore. We can see through them at this point. The bankers are being rejected. We see Hungary and Iceland kicking them out. Putin also no longer is dealing with them. And we see this. We see soldiers in the U.S. saying, I don't want to fight for this. I do not want to go into Syria at this point. And one of the major signs of the elite, the globalist, the central bankers are losing their grip on the people is by setting up DHS, FEMA, TSA, having NSA spy on everyone because they realize this is the end game. They do not have control, so they need to control with force. And they need to control the people when civil unrest occurs. This is how these people do it. They use the force to keep the U.S. dollar, and they use force to capture the natural resources of every country. We see it all throughout the Middle East. We see it in Afghanistan. We see it everywhere. They are using force, and they will use force in America to keep everyone under control. This is the only reason these agencies have been created. DHS has been created for terrorists, but what everyone doesn't realize is the terrorists will be those American people that fight back and rise up. Because if you look at the DHS terrorist alert system, it is always blank. There's never, ever, ever anything being alerted. And if you really think about it and you think back to the revolution, those people who were fighting against their government were also considered terrorists. It's the same thing. We're just repeating everything that happened once before. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well. be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.